So let's talk about the supplements in your gym bag. You probably think the science behind them was this, perfectly straight line from A to B. But the real story? Oh, it's way messier. It's a story full of brilliant minds, some really frustrating dead ends, and believe it or not, one very happy accident that involves a horse. And that really is the central question here. How on earth did a failed horse experiment completely revolutionize human performance? I know, it sounds nuts, but the answer is where we find out how one single moment of failure, mixed with a little curiosity, totally flipped our understanding of how to fuel the human body. Okay, so let's rewind the clock. We're back in the 1960s. And at this point, scientists, they knew that what an athlete ate was important. But that's kind of where it stopped. They were basically flying blind. They had zero way to actually look inside a living, breathing muscle and see what was going on with its fuel during exercise. And then everything changed. The big game changer was something called the muscle biopsy technique. Back in 1962, this Swedish physician, Dr. Jonas Bergstrom, he perfected this procedure. At the same time, his colleague Dr. Eric Holtman came up with this cutting-edge way to measure blood sugar. You put those two things together, well, they were about to unlock the deepest secrets of our muscles. And the technique itself, it was so simple but absolutely revolutionary. It was quick, pretty painless, and suddenly, for the first time ever, researchers could take a tiny snapshot of what was going on inside a muscle. They could measure its fuel, see what it was producing, see how it changed with exercise. It was like they'd been given a window right into the human engine. All right, so they've got this incredible new tool. What do you do with it? Well, doctors Bergstrom and Holtman, they decided to go after the biggest mystery of them all. What is the main fuel source inside our muscles when we're exercising like crazy? And the way they did it, it just shows how brilliant and frankly, dedicated they were. In this landmark study from 1966, they were their own guinea pigs. They got on a bike and each of them pedaled with just one leg until that leg was totally gassed. Then they took biopsies from both the tired leg and the fresh one. And after that, they just ate a ton of carbs for 3 days. And the results were, wow, just staggering. The leg they exercised was completely empty of its stored carbs, what we call glycogen. But here's the crazy part. After a few days of that carb-heavy diet, that same leg didn't just refill its tank. It overfilled it. It supercompensated, storing way more glycogen than the leg that did nothing. And right there, that's the scientific birth of carb loading, a concept that would totally change endurance sports forever. So they'd cracked the glycogen code. Awesome. The research team, which now had this brilliant young biochemist, Dr. Roger Harris, on board, started looking at the next big thing. What fuels those really explosive, powerful movements? And that led them to a substance called creatine. But this is where they hit a massive wall. In 1975, they did this small pilot study. It was never even published, on a couple of swimmers. They wanted to see if taking creatine could boost the levels in their muscles, and it didn't seem to work. So the team made a conclusion, a wrong one as it turns out. They decided you just couldn't load creatine into muscles by eating it. And that one wrong conclusion, it stopped all research on creatine cold for almost 15 years. The whole scientific world just moved on. Dr. Harris himself even left to go study muscle metabolism in racehorses. As far as anyone was concerned, creatine was a total dead end. But, and this is where the story gets really good. This is where it takes a completely unexpected turn. We're leaving the fancy Swedish lab and heading to a stable in the UK. And we're back with Dr. Roger Harris and an experiment that, honestly, was doomed to fail before it even began. So years go by after that failed swimmer study. Dr. Harris gets a free sample of creatine monohydrate. It just sits on his lab bench for months. Then one day, kind of on a whim, he decides, hey, let's try this on a racehorse named Sammy. The plan couldn't have been simpler. Just dissolve the creatine in water and give it to the horse. Except he immediately hit a really simple, practical snag. When he tried to mix the dose, he found out that creatine is a real pain to dissolve in water. It just doesn't. Most of it just sat there at the bottom, this gritty, crystal-like sludge. Well, he tried to give it to the horse anyway. But those undissolved crystals, they were like pouring sand into an engine. The syringe plunger just completely seized up, jammed solid. The experiment was a complete, total bust. He had to scrap the whole thing. So that's it, right? Another dead end? Creatine defeated?
this time by a stuck syringe and probably a very confused horse.
Nope, not even close. This, right here, is the moment everything changes. Instead of just throwing his hands up, Dr. Harris got curious. He basically thought, well, the horse thing was a bust, but what if I just try it myself? So he took a smaller dose, dissolved it properly in some warm water this time, drank it, and took his own blood samples. The result? A huge spike of creatine in his blood, and that flew directly in the face of what they concluded back in 1975. That one moment of what if, born from a totally failed experiment, changed everything. Dr. Harris immediately got back in touch with his old colleague Dr. Haltman, and they launched a proper human study. It got published in 1992, and that's the paper that officially kicked off the modern sports nutrition revolution.
And the findings were crystal clear. That 1992 study proved, without a doubt, that taking creatine orally could boost the creatine stores in your muscles by an average of almost 20%. That assumption from 15 years earlier was totally wrong. You could load your muscles with creatine.
And the effect was instantaneous. This wasn't just some boring academic paper. No, this went straight from the lab to the running track. That very same year, at the Barcelona Olympics, you had huge athletes like Linford Christie reportedly using a creatine product that was based on this brand new research. Science had literally gone from the lab to the winner's podium. And the legacy today? It's just immense. This whole line of research, which all started with a simple little biopsy needle, didn't just fuel Olympic athletes. It launched the entire multi-billion-dollar supplement industry. It kicked off research into other stuff, like beta-alanine. And now it's being used in clinical research to help with everything from healthy aging to fighting muscle-wasting diseases. Now, just recently, in 2024, the scientific community sadly lost Dr. Roger Harris. But he left behind this really humble and telling quote. His story is just such a powerful reminder that science is almost never a straight line. You know, sometimes the biggest breakthroughs don't come from some perfect, flawless plan. They come from working together, from being curious, and from being willing to learn from a completely failed experiment on a horse named Sammy.